morning. It is Wednesday, March 18th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News Today, a 3-hour special edition during which we'll try and make sense of the Israeli elections as the results are in. We're going to look ahead at what they mean for the future of the country of Israel. And yes, Israel has voted. Political analysts have called him the Phoenix. Former opponents have deemed him a magician. Benjamin Netanyahu has done it again. The morning after elections in Israel, the results are showing it. Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud are the big winners of last night's election. Let's take a look at the final numbers. As of this hour in Israel, what we're looking at is the Likud with 29. Benjamin Netanyahu party leads with 29. That's an upset after late last night when the initial results of the polls came out. We were looking at a split in the middle, 29 this morning for Likud, and the Zionist Union with 24. Breakdown afterwards comes down with the joint list, the joint list with 14. Of course, that's another upset of the elections this time around in Israel. But the big news this morning, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu. The numbers spell it all now. He wins currently a margin as of this morning, currently a margin of 5 mandates. Final results are due tomorrow afternoon, but the main winner of this runoff is Bibi Netanyahu. Last night, even before the morning gap was announced, Netanyahu gave a winning speech to his supporters in the Likud headquarters in Tel Aviv. This is what he had to say.
Against all odds, we achieved a great victory for the Likud. These are the things that are important for every family, for every father and mother, for every young couple, for every soldier and woman soldier, for every citizen, for all Israeli citizens, Jews and non-Jews alike. I talked to all the heads of the national camp parties this evening. I called them to join me and to form a government in Israel without delay, because reality does not take off time.
From the start, these elections were hailed as the Bibi election, the make-or-break election, and true to form, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu managed to pull off a spectacular, no other way of describing it, a spectacular election day feat, coming off from a 4-seat deficit to open a lead over the Zionist Union. Numbers this morning are quivering between 29 and 30. Latest numbers that we're looking at for the Likud are 30 supposedly mandates. And looking best to form a coalition is Benjamin Netanyahu. Joining us live from outside the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, is our own Ron Friedman standing by. And Ron, what are the results spelling this morning for the future government of Israel?
Hi, good morning, Yael. So like you said, I'm here in the Rose Garden. Right behind me is the Israeli Knesset, the Israeli parliament. This was the end goal of the last 3 months of vicious campaigning that ended with a decisive victory for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The Israeli public showed that they cared a lot about these elections. They went out to vote in great numbers, nearly 72% of the public. That's the most in the last 16 years. They also showed that they're not ready to replace the leadership. They gave the Netanyahu and the Likud a major lead over Bougie Herzog and the Zionist Union. And if last night we thought that it might fall on the president to decide who's going to form the next coalition, and he was pushing to a unity government. Today we see that all the cards are in Netanyahu's hands. The Likud this morning already coming out with statements that they plan to form the coalition within 2 to 3 weeks, but I'm not even sure it'll take them that long. The numbers show a natural right-wing coalition in the making. We know that the first telephone call Netanyahu made last night was to Naftali Bennett of the Jewish Home. He seems a shoo-in to join the coalition. Other parties, we're talking about Shas, other religious parties. We're talking about Avigdor Lieberman, foreign minister, whose party won 5 seats in this round.
As you said, Ron,
we can see him easily putting together.
As you said, Ron, you know, the numbers look like they're forming a right-wing coalition, but there's something not hanging in the balance, though. The make-or-break is actually the newcomer in the political game, Mr. Kahlon, from the Kulanu party. It's those numbers that actually will form completely a government for Netanyahu, isn't it? Either him or Yesh Atid.
Well, that's right. Kahlon, he's a veteran politician. He served in the Likud before, but broke away to form his own party, Kulanu, with a major focus on economic and social issues. He won 10 seats. Is he a natural partner for Netanyahu? In the past, they've had their differences, but this morning, Kachlon gave interviews in the media saying that he spoke to Netanyahu. Netanyahu said he was earnest about his offers. He's already offered him the finance ministry, and if he bends and if he's willing to go in with Netanyahu, it doesn't look like it's going to be a problem for Prime Minister Netanyahu to be in office for the foreseeable future.
For the foreseeable future. Ron Friedman standing by at the Israeli Parliament, the Knesset, will be with us all throughout the morning as we try and break these very dramatic results. A surprise. Everybody was talking about a surprise in these elections, and indeed it was a dramatic surprise. To try and figure out what it means for the future of Israel, we are joined in studio by I-24 diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev, who's been up for about 2 years. Good morning, to you. Obviously also by Haaretz senior defense correspondent Amir Oren. Amir, good morning to you.
Gail.
We are also joined in studio by the former member of Israel's Security Cabinet, Brigadier General on Reserve Ephraim Eitam. Ephraim, good morning to you. I want to start with looking, first of all, at these very, very dramatic results. Tal Shalev, okay, we were spending, you know, I think everybody in the media, one can point a finger at the Israeli media as well, we're definitely looking at an upset. Nobody was expecting this late last night. You know, we were looking to split in the middle this morning. There is no actually flinching about Netanyahu is the big winner of these elections.
Netanyahu and the Likud party, because I think for the first time in a while, the Likud party is definitely clearly the ruling party in Israel. This is the biggest party by far. And Netanyahu's achievement, I think, is outstanding. Just to think what he went through in the past 3 months. Everyone was betting, as you said, the Israeli media definitely has to have some kind of look back and look into itself to examine exactly how did it not feel the Israeli public so in such a dramatic way. But everyone was expecting Netanyahu to at least emerge weakened out of these elections. He was battered throughout in the past 3 months. He's been battered on a daily basis, and he emerges at the end of the day as an outstanding winner, and the Likud with him. Nobody expected it. There was the surprise yesterday at the Likud headquarters. You could really feel a surprise. It wasn't a show, and that was even before.
Before we woke up this morning to this major lead that the Likud has opened over the other camp.
Yeah, and to that extent, we were talking before the final results were out, we were talking about Moshe Kachlon as a kingmaker because he would be the one that would decide which coalition to go to. With these results, it's almost impossible for Kachlon not to go with Netanyahu.
With Netanyahu. And let's go live now to Danny Swibel, who is standing by, I-24 News, Danny Swibel, at Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's residence in Jerusalem. Definitely the big winner this morning, Benjamin Netanyahu, of these elections in Israel. Danny Swibel, you're in Jerusalem next to his house. Have you taken the pulse of the people in and around that area? What are people saying? What are they feeling this morning?
Well, as you can imagine, yeah, people here in Jerusalem who are a little more conservative, a little more religious, tend to support Netanyahu and the right-wing government a little more strongly. So as you could guess, people are very happy about the results. But I did talk to several people who were also very displeased with the results. Some people said that they were concerned with the election of Netanyahu to power again, that perhaps there would be international sanctions eventually. Perhaps the United States wouldn't be as strong supporters to Israel as they had in previous decades, generations. This was a major concern to them. Other people I'd spoke with who weren't happy were saying that this is an embodiment of the system not working. Even if Netanyahu comes to power, there won't be any change because nobody has a strong enough mandate to be able to affect that change. And again, they didn't have a positive outlook on the future. But most of the people I spoke to, again, were happy. It is Jerusalem, where there is a more religious community. They were happy with the results of this election.
Definitely the main base, so to speak. And as we said, Danny Swibel, I-24 News, Danny Swibel, outside of Benjamin Netanyahu's residence, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu resident in Jerusalem. We are also joined in studio by author and political activist and the former Speaker of the Knesset, Mr. Avraham Burg. Mr. Burg, good morning to you. With all the guests in studio, Tal Shalev just telling us about Netanyahu's big, one can call it comeback. I want to look at it around the world also. People are all looking at these elections. The Huffington Post this morning with a stunning headline, playing off of the name of the Prime Minister in Israel. Bibi is back, says the Huffington Post this morning. A great victory, stunning win after bruising campaign. Earlier, Netanyahu warns of Arab voter turnout. Mr. Borg, you're walking in straight into that line. And it's no secret that over the course, I think Tal shall have helped me out here, since Thursday, Netanyahu waged a tremendous campaign. A tremendous, tremendous campaign. What we saw last night also at around 6 p.m. Israel time was Netanyahu coming out on his Facebook page calling on Israeli voters to come out because the Arabs are, are getting onto buses and voting more. That narrative, Mr. Borg, seems to sell with the Israeli public.
First, what looks like selling is a good campaign. And there were three very good campaigners in these elections. Two succeeded, one not so much. Netanyahu is a fantastic campaigner. Yair Lapid is an amazing campaigner. Naftali Bennett somehow got weaker during towards the home stretch.
But he can sing. Okay.
Oh, yeah, well, he's a fantastic singer. And yeah, I was a creative composer. But nonetheless, Netanyahu, at his own home stretch, used the weapons or the ammunition he knows the best. And this is incitement, hatred, frightening people, etc. And in a society like ours, it works. Hopes is weaker than fears in the Israeli society. And Netanyahu is the master of fears.
For Brigadier General Eitam, and Amir, I'm with you in a second, if the narrative of fear and hatred is something that sells in Israel, is Netanyahu the prime minister that can bridge the gaps and unite a people that clearly seem to be so divided?
First, I think it's a time that the left-wing parties and I can say the vast majority of the media will wake up. It's not a campaign. It's a man who is having now his fourth term as the Prime Minister of Israel, so it's far beyond a successful campaign on this election time. It's far beyond that. He has something that at the end of the day make the majority of the Israelis to trust him again and again and once more and again. So it's far beyond that, and until the other side, the left-wing parties will not wake up and understand that it's not something that about to disappear just by using arguments like fear, like dividing the people. They will never come back to power. I think that it was a combination of three things. First, being very honest, Bougie and Tzipi were very pale, uncharismatic characters, and they just couldn't compete. The second thing is that the vast majority of the Israelis are conservative, do care a lot about the Jewish nature of the country, still give a lot of trust to Bibi, both as far as defense and security and strategy and economy, which he a little bit loose his hold about it, but he will no doubt be
Other
very...
people will argue that, it wasn't a little bit that he lost his hold on it.
Even more than a little bit, and he admitted that, and I'm sure that in this term, he will be very strongly involved, if not even dictating the economic policy. I think that if there is any fear and desperation, it does not come from the right-wing side. On the contrary, when I see my friend, and it's a personal friend, like Meir Dagan, with all his experience,
the former head of the Mossad,
the head of the Mossad, former head of the Mossad, stand and say, never ever was such a leadership failure in the state of Israel like the time of Bibi. It make me to feel that some people got blind out of their frustration. I don't use for Meir hatred, but frustration, maybe some ego problems. But it's not true. I can count at least 5 former prime ministers in Israel. One was found guilty in court. One resigned. A woman prime minister, just, after the Yom Kippur War, Golda Meir was in such a depression. One rabbin was murdered. We passed through so many crises that to say that Bibi, at his fourth term, is the problem of Israel, like I phrase it, to be or not to be, it's maybe a Shakespearean expression, but it's very far from the truth.
Then, Amir Oren, what is the problem of Israel? Because, we were discussing the media beforehand, and I think, it's fair to say and take responsibility that many of us in the media were calling these elections wrong.
No doubt.
Well, if one may be cast in the role of the last imperial Japanese soldier to come out of the jungle, and
take it away.
Yes, or being cast in the role of the devil's advocate.
Nothing can be said about desperation.
Yeah, I
and
know,
fear.
but in the Japanese, there you go.
The devil's advocate being drafted into the Imperial Japanese Army and then sent into the jungle and then coming out. Netanyahu hit his glass ceiling of 30 seats. There's nothing spectacular here. Of course.
Come on, Amir.
Well,
there's nothing spectacular about coming out with a victory as such.
Hold it. If you want unanimity around these tables,
No, I'm the one.
Deception, blindness, nothing with rational thought like such as experienced journalists like you should represent. Really.
No.
Experienced, you mean old? No, but
no. Go ahead.
But
no.
If you want unanimity, it won't make for good television. But in any event, Netanyahu always had about 30 seats, not more. In all of his election campaigns, he never got more than 30, sometimes, of course, less. Now, in the cabinet where Effie Eitam served, Ariel Sharon managed to get 38 seats, and then the problem was that his party, the Likud, was too big to encompass the disengagement from Gaza. So by virtue of having a bigger party, a bigger list in the Knesset, that in and of itself does not mean a lot. Now, when you say the people of Israel, define people, do you include the Arabs in it? Because everything that is being said today regarding what the pollsters have been saying, what the media has been saying, this is what Netanyahu himself saw as the reality until yesterday at noontime.
The nature of democratic election. You come with your vision, you come with your views, and you compete.
But
and
Effie, this was a response to the question, which is the right one. How were we so wrong?
It's a question that might be answered by Danny Danon, who is joining us on the phone right now. Mr. Danon of the Likud party, most likely celebrating this morning. Mr. Danon, thank you for being with us this morning. I am assuming that within the Likud party, nobody's even floating the idea of a unity government, are they?
Good morning. Prime Minister Netanyahu said it very clearly before the elections and also last night. First, we will go to our natural partners, the National Camp. We will form a coalition with them, and then we can offer others to join the government. But we will not do the mistake we did last time, that we actually asked Tzipi Livni to join the coalition. We will form a coalition with the National Camp, and then we can ask others to join us.
Well, it's not just Tzipi Livni, it's obviously also Yitzhak Herzog, and it's the Zionist Union that, you know, irrespective of Tzipi Livni being in there, do have 24 mandates. They are, you know, a voice to be reckoned with. But when you're saying that, we were discussing the narrative here that basically was heard last night from Prime Minister Netanyahu, the leader of your party, the Likud party. We were discussing the narrative of the Arab voters. That seemed to be a line that worked with many of the voters in Israel yesterday. The warning that Arab voters are going out to the polls. What about them being as citizens? A discussion that's going on in the studio right now.
No, let's take it into perspective. First of all, we should be very proud of our democracy, the only and the strongest democracy in the region. We saw the level of participation yesterday, and we can be all very proud of our democracy. Jews, Muslims, Christians, they all came and voted yesterday, and we are very proud of that. Yes, the Prime Minister mentioned that we saw an unprecedented amount of funds that were coming from NGOs, from abroad, and from government.
But Mr. Danon, it wasn't just funds. He said Arab voters are going to the polls, go out and basically, you know, make sure that you're there as well. Doesn't that put a division within people where Arab voters are also civilians and citizens?
No, nobody doubts that. And we all know that we will fight for the freedom of all citizens of Israel. But we cannot and we will not ignore the new NGO that were formed in order to bring those voters to vote. And I think if foreign governments intervened in our democratic process, this is something we should address. They should not meddle in our internal politics, and I think that's something that we all have to address.
Is there any chance for a unity government in this round?
Well, in politics, never say never, but I think the Prime Minister was elected last night to form a government according to the principles of the National Camp. That's what the people told him. go with your vision, go with your direction, and we had enough from the promises of the left. And I think we should first form a coalition from our partners, and then we can ask others to join the coalition.
Thank you, Mr. Danon, for joining us
Thank
this morning, Mr. Borg. That said, and Amir will be with you in a second, but you were shaking your head right now.
Well, I was shaking my head for all the previous round. I mean, for Mr. Eitam and a little bit for Amir and for Danny Danon as well. As for Danny Danon, I will say Israel is the only half democracy in the Middle East, and it's quite an achievement. As for what Mr. Eitam said, it is right.
What do you mean by half a democracy?
Can
you be more precise about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's not a full democracy for the Arab citizens. Formally it is, but practically it's a hollow one. It's not a full democracy for me.
Why? Why?
For me,
explain yourself.
For me, this is what I'm doing.
They are the third party in the Israeli democracy
Mr.
inside.
Eitam, it will be very difficult to listen through your open mouth. Okay, please let me tell you.
Why don't you use your gavel as the speaker?
I never use it when I was.
Guys, we're going to be civil, and I'm going to be the master of ceremonies.
And
Mr. Borg, continue. Everybody's going to get their chance.
For me, as an individual Jew who is limited by halachic religious limitations, it's not a full democracy. The second is for Mr. Eitam, Mr. Netanyahu, yes, is a solid political fact. However, the society is splitted not versus his personality only, but versus his policy as well. It is not that he was elected to be a prime minister. He was elected as the head of 1/4 of the Knesset faction. And then you have to build a coalition which is a compilation of various positions, but not necessarily this is what he got, this is not what he's authorized by the people. And therefore, the questions are two, or three actually, for the Prime Minister himself is he capable to reconcile all the destruction and reconstruct the destruction that he actually imposed on both his camp and others? The second is on Herzog and the rest of the camp. Can they finally, after 30-some years, become a serious, long-term, sustainable opposition-building alternative? And the third and the most actual and important one is for Mr. Kahalon. Are you really an extension of the Likud, or do you offer here something else, which means I do not join this cabinet unless it goes for a larger national reconciliation? These are the three questions on the table. All the rest of it is gossip, which I love, but it's less important.
That's important. Okay.
You just had a conversation with Danny Danon, who used to be the deputy defense minister. He is not a major factor in Israeli politics, but perhaps this entire election campaign was worthwhile to hear him, an intra-party rival of Netanyahu, sing his praises. But Danon
fired by Netanyahu.
Yes, of course. But also, Danon is also representative of the right wing of Likud, and he is trying to push Netanyahu towards rightward positions in the next cabinet. And if the Danons prevail, where the Feiglins, Moshe Feiglin, who is not in the Knesset now,
nothing about fear and hatred, huh?
We are talking about ideology.
Okay.
Ideology.
So you more than hint that this right-wing ideology will push Netanyahu towards a disaster.
Why should one hint when Netanyahu himself went back on his Bar Ilan speech? If Netanyahu really believes...
he didn't do that. He didn't do that. You should be very precise.
Let's be precise.
Prime Minister Netanyahu
he said the conditions now, and I 100% agree with him, in the Middle East do not allow and do not provide the partners even for the beginning of implementation of such thoughts as Bar Ilan. But I want to come to go back to the amazing arguments about the Israeli democracy being half a democracy because of what? Because we are split. America is split between the Democrats and the Republicans.
You have a beautiful way with words, but it is
you insisted
splitted.
About being my mouth shut.
It is
so
splitted.
Respect your request.
The Arabs are totally deprived from political rights as a hollow citizenship.
And
the religious thing is
to be honest.
No separation between church and state.
We cannot hear one of you if you're speaking over each other.
Between church and state. And democracy, which belongs to all its citizens,
it's a shame.
It's a shame.
It's a shame because you wanted me to shut my mouth.
Yeah, but you did not. So I have to answer accordingly.
When you spoke, and I respected that. But it's very characteristic to you personally and to the people whom you represent, that you have zero tolerance to some different ideas. And your ideas are coming from a holy ideology of making good in the world, and all the others are coming from the evil side. I want to say one thing. First, there is one message that this election gave to the media first. You are totally disconnected from these people, from the atmosphere in this country, and you are mixing your wishful thinking, your personal ideas with your reports.
I just want to stop you for a second because I want to ponder this out loud with Tal Shalev and Amir Oren. When everybody in the media and people were discussing a possibility that Likud drops below 20, where did that come from?
Well, first of all, it came from also internal polls inside the Likud itself. Netanyahu was panicking.
He launched... case in point, the campaign that he waged from Thursday on.
But
you know, I was not born yesterday, and I am quite experienced in politics. I never saw such a unity of recruitment to bring Netanyahu down, using all the most lousy, low arguments, information. Let's be very honest about that. And the people of Israel at the end turned their mind, even if they don't like Bibi, if they have some thing that they want him to be different, at the end, they thought it's an unfair game. And they voted against this one-sided recruitment of the media towards bringing not Bibi, but their
just for the minute
views
before we go to break,
down.
before the break, we're going to let one more person from the
one more
media
thing,
answer.
which is not less important. I think that President Obama and his administration will have to understand now that Bibi Netanyahu and a right-wing party, a right-wing government, which was democratically elected in this country, are here to stay even far beyond their term. So there will be a need from both sides, to repair this very special and strategic relations.
That repair is something that that we definitely want to delve into and see how that can happen because of the animosity that we've been hearing around this table. We're going
I can assure you that in a short time you will see again this
2-minute break, and we will be right back, and everybody will get their chance to speak. Do stay with us. I-24 News Morning Edition, day after election. Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud, the big winners in Israel this morning. Good morning, I-24 News Morning Edition, special edition, 3 hours, looking into the Israeli elections. Dramatic results this morning, as discussed here in studio, not called by the media nationally, but Benjamin Netanyahu is the big winner of the elections in Israel last night. Numbers coming in this morning are showing the Likud with 30 mandates as of this hour in Israel, 30 mandates. That is a gap that doesn't really leave any room for doubt about discussions about a unity government. The Zionist Union at 24, and yes, Benjamin Netanyahu is the main winner of these elections. And of course, we are looking at a country that many are saying we're split in the middle, not so much this morning. We're going to be going live now to Tel Aviv, to Rabin Square in Tel Aviv, where many last night, before the results were coming out, were predicting a different outcome for this election. Daniel Ziri, I-24 News, Daniel Ziri, standing at Rabin Square. The rallies that were held in that square over the course of the last 10 days may have tipped the scale when it comes to the elections. Daniel Ziri, you had a chance to speak to people in Tel Aviv this morning. How are they feeling about the results of these elections?
Well, yeah, I can tell you that just a few minutes before joining you here, I went to the coffee shops a little bit in the streets that you may see behind me in the surroundings of Rabin Square to kind of talk to people. And I have to tell you, the conversation was already started talking about the elections and the outcome of yesterday before I arrived. So I just joined in. And I have to tell you, yeah, people are disappointed, especially the young people, the 20-somethings of Tel Aviv, of this area, who live in this area. area were saying how disappointed they were. One of them told me, if this is what the majority of people in my country want, then I feel like I don't know my country. Another person said they wanted to cry last night. I have to tell you, Yael, that yesterday, and this square, as you said, it's been the scene of many celebrations, many political gatherings here in this square, and just last week, that was the case as well. But yesterday, a group of people had actually come here in the hope of probably celebrating a change in leadership in Israel, and that didn't happen. When the results came in and the votes, the numbers were so close, they kind of didn't know how to take it. They left a lot of people speechless, and this morning we're waking up to a different reality. The results actually show that there's a clear advantage for Likud.
Clear advantage for the
I would say a
Likud.
lot of disappointment here.
No, Daniel Ziri, feeling the pulse of Tel Aviv, a different city from Jerusalem, definitely different than what Danny Swibel told us outside of the Prime Minister's home this morning. We will be coming back to you throughout the show. Tal Shalev, speaking of Tel Aviv, when we're talking about the divide, and that's something to all the people in the studio right now, there does seem to be a split in the reaction to the results throughout Israel. And Tal, when it comes to Tel Aviv, you were saying.
It's not only the split in the reaction, the voting is different in Tel Aviv, the results are different. Tel Aviv and Haifa, another big city, a traditional red city. But Tel Aviv, the Zionist Union got 34.27 out of the votes, while the Likud got about 18% of the vote. But let's take a city like Be'er Sheva, in which the Likud got 37.69 of the votes, and the Zionist Union only 12.24. And this is one of the things that also explains maybe the media, the claims against the media in these elections. Tel Aviv is widely known as a bubble. Most of the media, most of the journalists come from this bubble, and this could create, and there's a difference between the trends in Tel Aviv and outside of Tel Aviv.
And Mr. Borg, you have Mr. Borg, you chime in right here, and Mr. Itam, of course, I will get to you in a second as well. Yes.
What is media? Who is the media? Is the media Haaretz and Jerusalem Post and Ma'ariv? This is old media, old talk, old structure, old politics. People communicate in different places, people express themselves differently, and therefore people should be polled differently. And my feeling is that most of the tools that expired in these elections are the old tools.
Expired completely. We're looking at a different reality.
They don't function anymore.
Yes.
One of Netanyahu's most successful mantras, which Efi Eitam repeated, is that the left was out to topple him. Netanyahu toppled himself when he called for early elections. He could have stayed on for another 2 years. There was no danger, but he managed to portray himself as being in danger of being toppled. Now, regarding what Avram Burg said about the media tried to call it as it is in the reporting, in the news items, and some people in the media have their views, and they can say what they may, at least for now, and at least if they don't report it on Netanyahu's favorite paper. But Efi Eitam, who is a member of the generation of the Yom Kippur War, and who earlier mentioned Golda Meir, in the summer of 1973, Golda had a big inter-party victory in the so-called Galili document. Right. Sadat's reaction was, okay, I read you, and he waged war. If what Efi Eitam means is that Israeli democracy can be blind to what the world sees in it, we are going to wake up to a very terrible situation. Just regarding what what Tal said regarding the election results, if you go to the south of Israel, to Sderot and Ashkelon, the victims of Protective Edge, they still voted for Likud. So perhaps we all deserve it.
But Mr. Eitam, you know, that's a valid point, and I want to wonder actually out loud with you as well, because maybe not just calling it wrong, but Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu himself yesterday, even if you were not a journalist, the actions as of 6 p.m. in the afternoon, calling a press conference, coming out on Facebook, calling for voters, that was a man who was worried. That was a man that you did not have to be a journalist to figure out that he was worried. And he did an amazing feat that everybody has to tip their chapeaus from Thursday on of campaigning alongside that with the numbers. It's not just the numbers, the animosity, the feeling throughout the country was also going in a certain way up until Thursday. I think one can say that.
I think that he was worrying, and not only him, but the majority of the Israelis were worrying about the possibility that such unexperienced, pale, non-charismatic characters like Herzog and Tzipi Livni will lead the country. And that's what democracy and a real democracy is all about. And I think he used all the tools he could. I don't think that he used fear more and beyond what have been used by the other side. And I think it's a time to wake up from all kind of wishful thinking and virtual thought. Bibi Netanyahu and the right-wing parties will set up a government. This government will have to work with the world, and the world will have to work with this government. It's in no way the worst government ever established in Israel, and it's now the responsibility of this elected government to heal and to bridge the gaps which were opened through a very intensive.
It's a good question. Can the world work with a right-wing government of Israel?
Of course, we had right-wing governments more than we had left-wing governments, and all the administrations worked with those governments, and even, and I think that split and confrontation between Bibi Netanyahu and the current administration in America was tremendously, for political reasons, exaggerated. I can promise you, very much as I was very right about my predictions as far as defense matters, I can promise you that in a month or two, you will see all this heat cooling up. Obama is the president of the greatest country in the world, and he will not allow his motions to shade on some real strategic decisions which have got to be made. Look what happened after the speech of Netanyahu in the Congress. It's now new voices about the nature and the possibility of having an agreement with Iran, also heard in America, also heard in the administration itself. So what I just can promise you, and you should call me in a month or two from now.
I will.
And you will see that the relations with America maybe are not a personal honeymoon, but they will come. Actually, they never stopped to function on the day-to-day working echelon basis. So that will not change.
I mean, but before the relations between Israel and the United States, and I think the world is watching Israel. The world is watching Israel very closely today. People were waiting for these elections. That's it's still staying internally. Ron Friedman with us still in Jerusalem in front of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, with Gil Hoffman of the Jerusalem Post. Ron, what are the analysts saying this morning?
Hi, good morning. We're still here at the Knesset, and with me is Jerusalem Post chief political correspondent and analyst Gil Hoffman. Gil, good morning. You've covered a lot of election campaigns, a lot of election results. Today, we see a decisive victory for Netanyahu, but is there a chance for a last-minute unity deal?
Ron, the chances of unity deal have gone down overnight with the Likud winning a big victory. And already last night, Reuven Rivlin's associates were saying that if Kahlon will join a right-wing government with Netanyahu, there's very little that he can do to pressure Netanyahu to form a unity government. And the Likud people told me this morning that that's not what the people want. The people spoke. They said they want a nationalist government. And if Netanyahu goes and forms a government with Labor, he would be seen as betraying their trust.
That's Gil Hoffman and his take on the chances of a political unity government. Back to you, Yael.
Thank you, Ron, with us at the Knesset and obviously joining us throughout the way. We were discussing how this will have an effect possibly on Israeli-U.S. relations. Discussions here in the studio are that maybe that the people of Israel, the country of Israel, is taking itself way too seriously.
Well, I've been Monday morning to the UK, to the British Foreign Ministry, and it was a discussion about something else entirely. And then, of course, at the off time, people ask, okay, what's going to happen. And we discussed various scenarios. And then one of them, a very interesting, brilliant analyst said, listen, by the end of the day, as much as you think that you are the center of the universe, maybe you are for yourself, but what do you think that our foreign minister, or the American Secretary of State, that he has 99 loonies around the world. Okay, so here's another one. This has a little bit more clout. When it comes to town, there is a little bit more attention given to him. But by the end of the day, we have a global scene to run. And having said that, I think that the single most important thing is not necessarily the negative policy of the world towards us, but the indifferent one.
An indifferent one.
Well, the British Empire is no longer globally represented, and perhaps they can have such a dejected view of the region. But this is the fulcrum of religion, oil, nuclear weapons. The world is not going to sit idly by. And there is another minor factor called the Palestinians. If the Palestinians are watching the results here, and they, for some reason, believe that they have no hope for a political process, what are they going to do in the coming months? And how will the U.S. administration react to what Abu Mazen, Hamas, or the Palestinian Street will do? If there is another uprising, much as F.A. Tam belittles the chances for that, how will Israel conduct itself?
Can we deal with the million-dollar question that nobody in this campaign was dealing with? And definitely, no, that's one that we're going to touch on in this table. But joining us on the phone right now is Merav Michaeli of the Zionist Union, of the camp that, you know, did suffer, and there's no other way of describing it, a loss last night. Knesset Minister Merav Michaeli, thank you for joining us this morning. Talks within the Zionist Union. You and I sat several days ago, a week ago. There was a different tune, a different idea that was being spoken and that was being expected out of these elections. What are the reactions this morning within the union, and what is the union going to do?
First of all, of course, this is a big disappointment for us. We went to sleep last night with much more encouraging results and got up this morning for this disappointing reality. But this is what it is. So now we have to, first of all, make sure that we're not, that we don't think, that we don't miss, first of all, the achievement, okay? There is a big achievement for Herzog, for our movement. It has grown significantly. And also, if you look at the right wing, the bloc hasn't grown. It's the same numbers that it had before. So Netanyahu took from his opponents within the right-wing bloc, but not from people on the other side. Now, I think these elections have made it very clear that there are two ways for Israel to go in. One is what Netanyahu is doing. He's really made it even worse than he usually does, inciting, intimidating, frightening, and tearing the society apart. And the other way is about social justice and about political and security, different and other way. And this is what we're going to continue working for. Now we have to think where exactly and how our movement's going to go forward. But we have to really keep our heads up and see that we have had a big achievement here and that it's just another round. We have to recuperate now and start preparing ourselves for the next round.
Recuperation, you know, seems to be, you know, the leading word with what you're saying. But were there any talks this morning? And I know people in Israel and obviously within the union went to sleep with one result, woke up to another. Is there any talk of trying to push for a unity government, seeing that split that is being discussed around this table and the split that you mentioned yourself within the Israeli people?
No. I think this is totally irrelevant. Let the right wing rule. Let's see them running the country and solving the problems of the public, of each and every one of the citizens. We've seen Netanyahu doing it poorly in the past 6 years. I mean, as a citizen, of course, I hope it'll be much, much better. I find it hard to believe, but I don't see any option of a unity government on the table right now.
Merav Michaeli, one more question here from Amir Oren, sitting next to me.
Good morning, Merav.
Amir, good morning to you.
Meretz barely sneaked in And obviously, this could be the very last time that they can compete.
Meretz being the extreme, the left of the dial party. To mention to our viewers.
It's hardly extreme. Meretz is it's important. No, seriously, it's important.
No, but it is not too different from the left wing of your own Labour Party. Are you, if we talked about the unity government, are you for unity between Labour and Meretz, or Meretz merging into Labour?
You guys, this is a very creative thought, but it's much too soon, much too early. Let us really. I mean, this is only the morning after.
Yes.
This is the first time we learn the new results. We need to think about it.
No, the media doesn't have to think. We have to come up with new ideas without thinking.
Yeah, Amir being very creative here. That's okay, because Amir Oren has already discussed the Japanese and the British, but we're here being very creative. Ms. Micha, I want to thank you this morning, and as you mentioned within your party, that unity right now is not on the table, as we're hearing from everybody else, and thank you for being with us this morning. Taking it back, though, to the table, because unity does not seem to be on the table, but there are severe animosity. If it's a right-wing government as such, and I'm putting aside the world for a second, how does, and the Palestinian issue that we discussed, that was not mentioned at all within these elections
Just
almost.
one correction. If Yair Lapid will join the government, as I believe he will that still remain a narrow right-wing government? Just because the Labour will not join it into a unity coalition party, government?
Why do you believe that Lapid is going to join the government?
I'm almost sure.
If
Lapid understands very well what the real meaning of being in the opposition now and being identified with the left in Israel, that's for him a death penalty. So when motions will slow down a little bit,
I want to stop you for a second and actually turn to Mr. Borg. When you hear lines as being in the opposition, being identified with the left, is like a death penalty, there is a division then, Mr. Eitam, that the left seems to be a dirty word.
A what?
A dirty word.
I don't really care. I don't really care. I think that Lapid is a conservative in most of his views, and naturally he can belong there as long as they can build a bridge between him and the ultra-Orthodox, and that's the business of the right. I'm not conservative. I'm progressive. I'm left-winger. I'm very proud of it, and I believe that the voice of it is underrepresented at the Knesset because it was ill-represented at the last 30-some years, and the tragedy started at '84 when Shimon Peres first joined the National Unity Government of Shamir, and ever since the notion of opposition, the concept of thinking in alternative terms in the Israeli society actually evaporated, and it's a long-term process. I'm a marathon runner in my private life, and it takes a longer process. But to think that, as Menachem Begin said, and this is a very crucial democratic notion, you can serve the nation from the opposition as well. It's a service, and this is what Labour now has to do, to regroup, to reorient itself.
There are two different perceptions of reality and of trends. Eitam believes that the wave of the future is by joining the right demographically and for other reasons. And Avrum Burg, and he's not the only one here, believes that there is an ebb and flow. There are tides and turns in politics. Today, it's the right wing's turn. Tomorrow, it may be the other way around. Nothing is predestined. We may still get another sort of coalition in the next election.
I need to comment about the left being a dirty word.
It's
not a dirty word.
Yitzhak Herzog has just congratulated Prime Minister Netanyahu and has been quoted, that's Buzzi Herzog of the Zionist Union, saying that the voter has spoken his mind. That's a concession speech in many ways. Well, a concession call.
Definitely, and we also heard Merav Michaeli, but I think when everyone is going to talk about how the polls failed, one poll was successful all the time, and it was constant and continued, and that was the one that asked Israelis, who do you think is most suitable to be the prime minister? That is the poll that actually did create, and one of the things was the thesis that was out here to ask was, does Netanyahu have an alternative? And the fact is that Herzog, whether it's because of the rotation agreement, that it was a peculiar rotation agreement,
or
a problem of charisma, or a problem, or the fact that most of the Israeli public is shifting to the right. The fact is that at the moment there wasn't an alternative to Netanyahu. It didn't emerge out of these elections, and that is the one poll that did succeed to actually forecast what would happen.
I must tell you that I agree with what Merav Michaeli said. It's a competition between ideas, ideologies, and I don't think in any way that being leftist is a rude word. This morning, in the competition between two ideas, two worldviews, ideologies, the right wing have been winning this morning. It might be change, but I must tell you that at the end of the day, I believe deeply that everyone, including Avram Burg and Amir Oren and myself, are looking to make Israel a better place to live, more flourishing, more successful. And it has been proven once and again that at the end of the day, this Israeli society and the Israeli democracy can contain this tension of election and go back to the road of daily life. And when unity, national unity is needed, it's demonstrated once and again. If solidarity is needed, as we saw it in all the crises,
in the wars,
yes, but this is the real moment where the roots of unity are examined, and it's been proved once and again that it does not get weaker. On the contrary, as far as the Palestinians, I can tell you in one word: they are not the leading factor of the problems in this region, so they are not also to be an obstacle for solutions and negotiations.
Yes,
just regarding unity in war, yes, Israelis are united in war, but the question is, was this war inevitable? Was this war avoidable? Whatever the next war is, and that's a question for policy and for prudent leaders ahead of the war in order to prevent it by skillful diplomacy and the least use of force.
And with the least use of force, but again, if the Palestinian issue was not on the table when it comes to campaigning, it's still something that is not going away. And, I'm wondering out loud actually with you, Mr. Brook, will the opposition do something to try and push forward negotiations? Can they even do that in the reality and the atmosphere that Israel has woken up to this morning?
I think that the opposition role here will be minimal at the first couple of months. I mean, regrouping will take some time. But the Palestinian problem did not disappear from other tables, neither from the regional table nor from the international community's table. And therefore, the question is, what is happening now at various war rooms or election rooms around the world? What do they think? How do they assess Israel now? What is it? Should we put pressure on it? Can we persuade it? Is it for conversation or is it for imposing? And we shall know very soon where it stands. Let's say worst come to worst. Nobody pays attention. It is not there. They move to oil. They move to nuclear, whatever it is. So I take it the Palestinians will go to the UN, will push as much as possible through every impossible international institution, and we shall see, I think, a reluctant American support of Israel.
The Americans basically have their plan already. There probably will be either an American or a joint American-European resolution that will set the parameters for any final status agreement, and that is what is expecting Israel and this.
And that's the question: what Netanyahu is going to do.
So Netanyahu now has the challenge of in this right-wing government to find the more first of all, and I think it's the biggest challenge for him if he wants to go for a right-wing government, to find the more moderate faces among these party members and to put them at the...
Well, not the people that put him in power this morning, actually.
Well, some of them inside the Likud, inside Moshe Kahlon's party. If Yair Lapid joins the coalition, you can find moderate faces. That's what Netanyahu needs to save face. Netanyahu didn't just... For him, it was just an election promise to say he didn't want to go to a unity government. He actually did prefer a unity government. He knows that a right-wing government will create a lot of problems for Israel in the international arena. But in any case,
Why do you think you prefer a government of unity? Two different ways, two different ideologies. He said it once and again.
He's still facing the world.
Why?
With commitment.
Because Netanyahu's paramount desire is to avoid an Iranian nuclear weapon. And for that, he has to play a Palestinian card, too. He cannot be a rejectionist on all fronts.
I think that those who connect between the nuclear threat, which is a strategic threat over the whole world, and this small, marginal domestic problem which we are living with.
Can one call it a marginal problem, Mr. Eitam?
Yes, we are living with this problem
that is not going away.
Since 48, and we are negotiating. I heard these catastrophic predictions for years. Palestinians now enjoy such flourishment and such
enjoy is the right word.
Yes,
especially in Gaza,
of course. I don't speak about Gaza. I don't speak about Gaza. I don't speak about Gaza. And you can again come with all these fears of catastrophic things around the corner. It does not happen. Israel becomes stronger, richer. The Palestinians who abandoned terror enjoy this flourishment too, and this obsession to
it's not obsession, it's a moral commitment not to occupy 5 million people.
At the future of the state of Israel through solving the Palestinian problem.
And sadly, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Eitam, this is all the time we have, but dramatic results this morning in Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu and Likud winning the Israeli elections. Everybody discussing it this morning, not just around this table, but most likely all around the world. So stay with us. I-24 News Morning Edition. We will take you through a special edition of what this all means in Israel, regionally and internationally. Stay with us now. The news. I-24 News Morning Edition. Good morning to everybody. Special edition, 3 hours, looking at the dramatic results of the Israeli elections that came in overnight. Actually, a change, an upset in the morning from the numbers we saw late last night. We were looking at a split in the middle, but this morning it is clear. The man, Benjamin Netanyahu, the man that was deemed the headline of these elections, the Bibi elections, won the elections in Israel. The numbers that we are seeing this morning, early on this morning, the Likud and Benjamin Netanyahu with 30 mandates. That is a lead. That is an upset and a lead of approximately, well, this poll is saying 29, but the other numbers that we're hearing are 30 for the Likud and the Zionist Union at 24. That is between a 5 or either 4, either a 5 or a 6 mandate separation between Likud and the Zionist Union. It is clear that the winner of these elections is Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, the man who called these elections 3 months ago and was actually, all the media in Israel were calling this election wrong. But the Phoenix, as they call him, the magician, as political analysts have deemed Benjamin Netanyahu over the course of the last several years, has proven again that he is the man that Israel wants as prime minister. And we're going to go first straight to Ron Friedman, who is standing outside the Knesset, the parliament of Israel, this morning. Ron, we're looking at most likely what seems to be a right-wing coalition, I am assuming, this morning?
Yeah, that's the case, yeah. So here at the Knesset in Jerusalem, Netanyahu is already making phone calls. He started making them yesterday in an attempt to form a narrow right-wing coalition. What that means for him as far as the international arena is that he's going to face the continuing challenges that he's had until now, perhaps even more so if the government really is leans more to the right. We're already hearing ricochets. This morning, Palestinian chief negotiator Saeb Erekat, a close aide of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, gave an interview in which he said the Israeli street failed the peace process. It showed the results of yesterday's election showed that they were not interested in the peace process, not interested in the two-state solution, that they buried it. And he already announced that the PLO leadership is going to be convening tomorrow morning to discuss their steps in reaction to these dramatic election results. One of them revisiting an issue that they've threatened to do in the past, which is to stop security coordination with Israel.
Now, Ron Friedman standing at the Knesset, at the Israeli parliament, will be joining us, of course, throughout the day with updates of all the maneuvering, if there even will be maneuvering, seeing and looking at the elections, at the election results this morning. And joining me in studio for this hour of a special edition of I-24 News Morning Edition, Ali Waked, I-24 News Senior Middle East Analyst. Good morning to you, Yariv Oppenheimer, of the left of the dial of Peace Now. Of course, Boaz Bismuth of Israel Hayom, sitting here with a big smile.
You forgot the left when you mentioned the left. There was one another.
There's one left that was not left there.
That you left.
That was not left there. And of course, for the numbers crunch, name and whatnot, we're going to be sitting here at the numbers that we were discussing at the beginning of these elections that there might be crunching up, but that doesn't really seem to be a question this morning. That says Roi, help me pronounce your last name, Cezna. Roi Cezna of Tel Aviv University, with the computer, who is going to try and give us all kinds of possible mixes to form a coalition. But at this juncture in time, this morning, at this hour, it looks that Benjamin Netanyahu is poised to form a right-wing government. So it looks, which begs to, which raises the question that many issues that have not really been discussed, Ali Waked, throughout this election campaign, and that is the Palestinian issue. We had a discussion earlier on, an hour before here, where the Palestinian issue was deemed supposedly marginal, but by a right-wing guest, by former Brigadier General on reserve, Efi Eitam. Is it marginal, and how can Benjamin Netanyahu, if we're looking at the right-wing government, let's talk about the Palestinian Authority first. They're waking up this morning. What are they thinking?
They are thinking that they were betting on a peace process. There is a very silent uprising that is being prepared against the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Palestinian leaders are since this dawn pronouncing the two words that were almost a taboo of a binational state, that the Palestinian Authority should get rid of this strategy and ideology of the two-state solution, and that this is on the ground, it is no more viable, but politically, after the choice made by the Israeli population, which shows that what the international community were thinking, that there is no partner in the Israeli side for the two-state solution. I think in the tomorrow, the Palestinian Authority and the institutions of the PLO will be meeting to discuss the maintaining of the march towards the international institutions, the international court, the French initiative. And I think, Yael, for the first time, we are going to hear a very mainstream Palestinian leadership pronouncing the two words of a binational state, calling upon Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to leave this idea of the two-state solution. Fatah is in a very weak position this morning vis-a-vis Hamas, and even vis-a-vis... Are you hearing
chatter that within the Palestinian Authority, within the Palestinian community, there is talk of a binational, of calling or looking and considering a binational?
I can tell you that in the last month, I saw a paper of the United Nations and precisely of the UNDP discussing the scenario of a binational state. And in a diagram, I saw that the prime minister should be Jewish, and that the chief of staff of this binational state should be also an Israeli Jew. So the binational state will be heard more and more in the coming days, because it is very clear the Israeli population did not hesitate. It shows a right-wing, very clear government. And I think the challenge is not at the door of the Israeli government. I think the challenge is at the door of the pragmatic part of the Palestinian leadership.
And we are joined now on the phone by Ziad Abu Ziad, Palestinian political analyst. Mr. Abu Ziad, good morning to you.
Good morning.
East Jerusalem, you're speaking to us from East Jerusalem. I want to ask you out loud right now, Ali Waked, I-24 News senior Middle East analyst, just mentioned that within the Palestinian Authority, there has been talk, chatter behind the scenes, and that given these election results, that the word a binational country, a binational entity is beginning to float up, that might be a solution, that even the Palestinian Authority is looking at giving the veer to the right of the Israeli public. Is that something that you can see happening within the Palestinian population?
This is what we were warning that will happen in the case that Israel continues to refuse the idea of the two-state solution. I think that the results of these elections shows clearly that the majority of the Israeli public opinion is against the two-state solution, which is almost dead because of the reality on the ground of the settlements and the hundreds of thousands of settlers within the 67 borders. And today, with this political agenda in which this newly government that we will witness in the next couple of weeks was elected on the basis of statements made by Netanyahu in which he said that if he will be elected, he will prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state. And Bennett's statements in which he was all the time launching a kind of a war campaign on the existence of Palestinians on this land. So a binational state is the only left option that will be available for the Palestinian leadership and the Palestinian people. The fact that millions of Palestinians...
But where would that, if that is the case, where does that leave Hamas? And actually, stay with us, Ziad Abu Ziad. Yes, Ali.
You don't, instead of concentrating on Hamas, you need to concentrate on the whole agenda of the two-state solution since Oslo. If you look at the Israeli campaign for this winning majority this morning, it was all built on statements against the Oslo, against whatever was achieved in the peace camp within the Israeli...
No, valid point, and it's sold, and it seems to have sold.
And it shows that until today, the Israeli people does not understand, the majority of the Israeli people, unfortunately, does not understand that for occupation there is a price, a high price, that will be paid soon, as it used to be paid before the establishment of the Palestinian Authority.
Mr. Ziad, one minute, please.
Hamas media was campaigning in the last week, saying that the Palestinian Authority is living in a utopia, that there might be a change within the Israeli society, and that the Israeli electors are much more right-wing than their leadership, and that there is no chance for negotiations, there is no chance for the two-state solution. And I want to ask you, Ziad, tomorrow the Central Committee, the Executive Committee of the PLO will be meeting. Beside the question of going to the Security Council, do you think that the two-state solution will be publicly put on the table to be discussed?
Actually, there is nothing to discuss about it. We made it clear. The Palestinians made it clear, whether when talking about the Central Committee or even the Fatah Party or the PA, the Foreign Affairs Ministry, that if Israel continues in this way of denouncing the two-state solution, they will continue with their unilateral steps towards the International Criminal Court and demand from the Security Council to be involved in the process of recognizing Palestine as a state on the 67 borders. If the international community would not agree on this, then the only left option will be a Palestinian Popular Resistance white campaign, the possibility of putting the choice of dissolving the existence of the Palestinian Authority, which was actually established only for the sake of reaching the two-state solution, and not to turn it into an administrative authority that is simply administrating the occupation for Israel.
Right. Ziad,
so it's going to be a hard future.
Now, Mr. Abu Ziad, do stay with us on the phone. I want to bring this back to the table for a second. Boaz Bismuth, you're standing with us, and I have to ask you, because this is actually not explosive, but it's a new line of thinking that if from the Palestinian Authority, that notion would be floated of a binational country. That said, Prime Minister Netanyahu campaigned very strongly over the course of the last several days. From Thursday on, he even disavowed himself from the Bar Ilan speech, which called for a Palestinian state. Is that something that the international arena is going to let him get away with? And if he forms a right-wing government, what are we looking at?
I'm very sorry to disappoint your guest, Ziad Abu Ziad, and your guest here around the table by saying that yesterday, we had elections, dramatic results. And by the way, I think that during the campaign, even left-wing parties, even the Zionist, I think that is the new name they have, the Zionist Party, Zionist Union, I didn't see, them putting on the table the Israeli-Palestinian problem on the table, all the negotiations, which means priority is not the same. By the way, let me only remind you, in 1999, and maybe I'm not that young, but I'm young enough to remember what happened in 1999. We had elections, I think Netanyahu lost. I didn't see a Palestinian state. I didn't see a big change in what we have seen. I've seen the Palestinians, on the contrary, missing again another opportunity, again and again. Now, they had another opportunity 10 years after with Prime Minister Netanyahu with his speech in Bar Ilan. Now, what I saw yesterday, we speak now about binational state, etc., and all those words and trying to scare us what is going to happen in the future. What I know is that we have a democratic Jewish state, which is Israel. We had elections yesterday. I wish my neighbors would have had the same thing, but they don't. We had elections. The Israelis
this is why they want the national state. They say we want to vote.
They want to vote.
I know. I understood. I know. I understand a little bit. We have had elections yesterday. I think the Israelis have shown the priority. Israelis are not afraid, by international arena. By the way, my prime minister, Israeli prime minister, elected, and for the fourth time, he's going to form a government. Have you seen his relations with the President of the United States? Israelis were not scared by that. They understood perfectly that the Middle East is changing. Right now, we have priorities. And I'm very sorry, with all the respect to the Palestinians, I think they again missed a chance in 2009. And every time they have an opportunity, they missed it again and again and again. And maybe the price will be a bit higher now for them.
Okay, I want to turn to you. We have 2 minutes to break. But in that respect, if what Mr. Bismuth is describing is actually also something that the Israeli voter, in many ways, has voted, for that ideology, for maintaining what many will argue is a status quo. So where did the camp of the left fail?
It's a huge question, and what was wrong in our campaign or our message is it's not just about this election, it's about the ability of the peace camp or the left wing to approach the Israelis. I will try to sum it in two major issues. The first one is what Netanyahu is being said, and the right wing is being said about the peace camp for all the years, including few hours before the election started, during the elections, that the Arabs are going to vote like they are terrorists, and the left wing is terrorist, and it's all been sponsored by the foreign money. This brainwash is effective. And the second thing is our fault. We are not able until now to reach out to the Israelis outside of the areas that are in
Why?
I think that we are not doing things right, and we have to check it. It will take time, but I hope that this election will be a wake-up call for everyone. There is always this feeling that the left wing, with the media and with the international community, is coming above the Israeli people, and maybe we can gain points in the argument, because it's very clear that the two-state solution is an Israeli interest, but we are losing point in the attitude, in the way that we are speaking and communicating or uncommunicating with the Israeli society, and we cannot hide it anymore. We have to challenge it, we have to change it, because I think that eventually our message is the right message, and the people that are going to pay for this result of the election, it's true, there is a democracy and there is election and this is the government, but we are going to pay a huge price for it. I hope not, but there is a good chance that we will. Another war, maybe, another circle of violence, another economic problem.
Yeah, so we're going to continue this in 2 minutes. Guys, we're going to continue this in 2 minutes, folks. We're going to continue this in 2 minutes. Going to break. Stay with us. I-24 News. Dramatic results of the Israeli elections. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sweeps. We'll take a closer look. Stay with us. We'll be back. I-24 News Morning Edition on this March 18th, 2015. Israeli elections, the morning and the dawn that Israel wakes up to a dramatic win by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his Likud party, joined in studio by I-24 News senior Middle East analyst Ali Waked. Good morning to you. By Dr. Roy Tsezna, who will give us some numbers very shortly on of the possible coalitions, although it's looking very leaning to the right now. Yariv Oppenheimer, left of the dial, and of course Boaz Bismuth, the man with the smile of Israel Hayom. But we are going first to Ramallah, where I-24 News contributor Jake Wertschafter has been spending the day, the last 24 hours. And in Ramallah, as we were discussing this morning, a lot of chatter in the Palestinian Authority in reaction to the elections in Israel. What were you hearing from people in Ramallah?
Well, first of all, I think there's a lot of irony and a lot of contradiction here, just like there is on the Israeli side. Look, for the Palestinian Authority leadership, this result that makes it look like Netanyahu has won and will stay in government makes things easier for them. After all, they have a calendar and a schedule that existed prior to the elections, and it exists after these elections. And the Palestinian Authority is pretty committed to going to the International Criminal Court, to going to The Hague, to advancing its campaign against Israeli settlements, against what they describe as war crimes and a genocide in Gaza, intensifying diplomatic efforts to isolate Israel, encouraging the boycott, sanctions, and divestment movement on campuses in the United States and and in labor unions in Europe. And these plans existed before the election, and now they don't have to change these plans. So to that extent, this result makes things easier for the PA. The irony that, for me, is the fact that actually Hamas wanted the Arabs of Israel or Palestinian Israelis to participate in this election. Why? Because it shows that there's a democratic process underway in the Palestinian community that's inclusive, that includes Islamists, nationalists, and left-wing progressives. And the presence of those, what are we up to now, Yael? I'm not sure.
13, 14? It's looking as anywhere between 13 and 14, yeah.
Okay. So, this then raises all the sort of fundamental questions about Israel and the Zionist project that Hamas would love to be asked. It challenges the notion of inclusion in Israeli democracy. It challenges the notion of the viability of the Jewish state.
Right.
And at the same time, I think actually Hamas has something, has a dog in this fight here, and that this is a model for Palestinian politics and participation and coordination that challenges the way that the Palestinian Authority has done
actually
stuff.
looking
I'm
at stuff.
interested in what Ali thinks about it, too.
That challenges, definitely Ali Walker, that challenges, the idea of democracy within what is the two, one can say, the contentious land. But Jake Wertschafter joining us from Ramallah, thank you so much for being with us this morning. We're going to move now to Danny Swibel, I-24 News correspondent. Outside of the Prime Minister's house, Benjamin Netanyahu definitely not just still Prime Minister, but Prime Minister, so it seems, for the foreseeable 4 years. Danny Swibel, you're speaking to people beforehand. And also, what is going on with Prime Minister Netanyahu as of this morning?
Well, first off, you could definitely imagine the excitement here in Jerusalem. Cars have been driving by en masse, beeping their horns. A lot of them have banners of Bibi connected to their cars. People are walking past us shouting Bibi. As you can imagine, people here who tend to be more conservative and religious are very excited. I did discuss with some people who were very disappointed at the election results. They are worried that perhaps now we will see international sanctions, that international bodies will work against Israel, and even the U.S. could perhaps withhold their veto power in the UN. So there was definitely a lot of concern from other people I'd spoken to. As it stands, Netanyahu is currently talking to different heads of the right-wing parties, looking at how he's going to get past the 6-1 threshold to form a coalition. Right. He got a call from the head of the Zionist camp, the Zionist Union camp, and obviously expressing their congratulations. But the scene here in Jerusalem is definitely joyous. I don't know about the rest of the country, but here people are definitely happy about Bibi's victory.
Danny Swibel, I-24 News correspondent, outside Benjamin Netanyahu's Prime Minister's residence in Jerusalem. And as we mentioned, Yitzhak Herzog has called this morning, has already called, Yitzhak Herzog, the head of the Zionist Union, has called Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to congratulate him, which one can only deem a concession call, a call to congratulate him over his win. Dr. Roy Tsesna of Tel Aviv University joining us today. We sat several days ago, and to all my esteemed friends, colleagues around the table, we were looking at the numbers game, although it seems like this is going to be a right-wing coalition. But we cannot discount the 13% of the Israeli Arab vote as well. If you have a computer, at Tel Aviv University that basically deals with the numbers, is there a way that we're looking either at unity or something else, given the numbers, or is Netanyahu poised to form a right-wing government?
Well, as you say, we have constructed an artificial political advisor,
brain, yes,
that looks at the political stance, the ideological stance of each party, and tries to build them together. And right now, according to the current results, I have to say that the first top coalitions seem to be those of unity, in which Netanyahu takes the Likud and the Zionist Union, joins them together, adds in a few center parties as well, Yesh Atid, Kulanu, possibly Israel Beitenu, and then you get a coalition that is large, is relatively stable, and it also seems that the president of Israel, Mr. Reuven Rivlin, wants this coalition as well. He strives, he said yesterday that he will strive for a unity coalition. This is the first scenario.
Yeah, but that's a unity coalition with the camp? No, with the Zionist.
With the Zionist Union.
With the Zionist
Union,
yes. Yeah, that's what the president supposedly wants.
This is one scenario which the artificial advisor actually promotes and believes that it's going to happen.
But then we have real people.
Yeah, exactly. Then we have reality. Then, because the political advisor doesn't understand, you know, the intrigues, doesn't understand the hatred between people and so on. So in the second scenario, Netanyahu and the Zionist Union do not sit together. And then when we look at the top 5 coalitions which Netanyahu can build, we find that the top coalition contains Yesh Atid, Kulanu, Habayit HaYehudi, Yahadut HaTorah, and Israel Beitenu, or possibly replacing Yesh Atid with Shas. In both of these cases, you get a coalition that is extremely right-winged. You also get security-wise, and you also get a coalition in the second one, especially with Yahadut Torah and Shas, a coalition that is extremely religious and is likely to promote religious laws and rulings. Now, we can't say obviously which scenario is correct. I think it's up both to Netanyahu to think of how Israel is, you know, how they look at Israel from the global perspective, because he needs Yesh Atid, he needs the Zionist Union to still present some kind of semblance that we are looking for peace. And he is not going to get it with the extremely right-winged coalitions.
And you know, it's a fabulous point, Boris Bismuth. I want to ask you, does he really need that? Does Prime Minister Netanyahu need to present, you know, political analysts around the world would argue that he does, given U.S.-Israeli relations, that he does need even the pretense of peace. But when the Prime Minister of Israel disavowed himself from the Bar Ilan speech several days ago, and hold on, one more question, because I want Ali to answer that as well. Yesterday, when we saw the grab, and actually one could say many people described it as panic at around 6 p.m. of Prime Minister Netanyahu coming out and asking his voters to run to the polls because the Arab voters, the Arab citizens, are going to vote. Does he realize that, you know, that this is a division within the people, and that's a narrative, though, that has sold, but there's a division split in the middle?
First of all, I think that what Benjamin Netanyahu needed, first of all, was the public support and polls and votes, and that's what he had. That's the first thing.
Obviously got it.
He got it. That's it. But now it's over. He won the elections. What next? You know, in Israel, I mean, we're always in tomorrow. That's it. It's dead. I mean, what's next? That is the big question. Now, we have seen in Israel, and I think that my friend Yariv Oppenheimer would have liked to be the man who can smile, would have said, I think, and we agree on one thing, Yariv and I, my friend Yariv and I, is that, in fact, maybe it would be good to have a right-wing government or a left-wing for a government of Israel to take a decision. I mean, you decide. I mean, with those settlements, I mean, whether they're yours and that's it, and you annex them, whether they're not, and you give them back a clear opinion. I'll always remember the name of Professor Dan Shiftan, his book that you probably do dislike, but Israel never, ever since 1967, never had a clear policy concerning those territories, if you want, or whatever you want to call them, Judea and Samaria, if you prefer, of course. So that is one point. Now, we have seen also in the past that you can have restraint, you can have right-wing governments with that succeed, that work, that can function, and we have seen also left-wing
governments that they can actually even sign peace accords.
And that's it. And not forget, Oslo with only one vote, one Knesset deputy who made a difference. So you can, in Israel, you can rule, you can govern with a very weak support in the Knesset. On the contrary, look at the former government that didn't last more than 2 years. You had Tzip Livni, you had Yair Lapid, you have Bennett, you had Netanyahu, and look, it didn't function whatsoever. So on the contrary, I prefer a restrained government that works, that is clear, and now concerning the world, the image we have to give the world.
But the question here is for everybody, and you know, and Ali, I'll start with you, because I'm talking also about the Israeli Arabs. I'm talking about the Israeli Arabs that yesterday were pinpointed specifically.
If you permit me just one word concerning the Israeli government. Yes, I was invited by many foreign media yesterday. Then of course many of my friends talking again, you know, all those trying to scare us, of course, with Israel. I mean, I live in a country where 40% of the people are poor, and of course I was back in Mauritania, and of course this is an apartheid state. So I was very happy. I was very glad to see, I mean, this Arab party coming third, I think, and maybe, as you said, maybe this vote, maybe Israeli voters told Netanyahu, with all the respect, you can deal with Iran or with the Palestinians, but you also have to take care of my bills and make me have an apartment. And I think that his speech was very social. Also, the Arab voters told the Arab party, I think maybe it's about time, with all the respect to Palestinians, take care also about us, about our villages, about our roads, about our schools, about our health care.
No, but...
Yeah, first, I think it was amazing yesterday, the call of Prime Minister Netanyahu for the right-wing voters to go and to vote, because his Arab citizens, the citizens whom he is also their prime minister, whether they like it or they don't like it, Benjamin Netanyahu is the prime minister, but also whether he likes it or not, they are Israeli citizens and his citizens, and he is responsible for them also. And calling the Israeli Jewish right-wing audience to go and to vote, because my Arab Israeli citizens are going to the votes, and I thought, with my naivety, that going to vote in the Israeli elections should strengthen our feeling of belonging to the Israeli society and to the Israeli system. And my prime minister was campaigning for me not to come and not to participate in this democratic festivities. This is one thing. I think, Yael, what happened yesterday is a very clear message from the Arab-Israeli population to those Arab separatist forces who did not want the Arabs to go and to vote, that around a huge percentage of Arabs, more than 65, went to vote, sent a clear message both to the Lieberman and right-wing elements and both to the Arab separatist forces. We are part of the Israeli collective. We want to be first-class citizens, and we do not accept to be second-class citizens. And this is a clear message. Second, on the Arab international level, the Arab-Israeli experience of bringing together communists, nationalists, and Islamists in the same political electoral list is a phenomenon that is being now studied in the academia, in the Arab media, and in the Arab universities. Also, I bet that there are more chances that this list will split in the very short future. But this is also a phenomenon in a very divided Arab world where everybody is slaughtering everybody because of ideological and ethnical differences. This Arab minority in the Jewish state is sending a message that different ideologies can coexist together.
They have to coexist together.
May I answer my good friend Ali, and just to tell him, first of all, I'm very happy, of course, that they are third, and this is great for my democracy, on the contrary, for my image as a country when I represent my country all over the world, or as Israelis, of course.
Yeah,
and
but
I
your
would
prime
tell you one
minister
thing
wants
concerning,
everybody.
concerning my prime minister and his supporters, because you know he had supporters. It wasn't a coup yesterday. His supporters, don't appreciate that much parties who combine Islamist and how do you say, non-Zionist parliament deputies. That's one thing. Second, concerning what you say about the Arab world watching and learning and studying, I think that was tactical. I think that Lieberman, which you know how much I appreciate, 3 points, of course, when he spoke the same way he spoke, when he mistreated on TV a leader of an Israeli party, I think every Israeli totally disliked it, or the average Israeli disliked it. Yet at the same time, it's not because we dislike Lieberman's attitude towards the Arab parties that we appreciate a non-Zionist party in our Knesset.
Boaz, you're making a very good PR to Lieberman and Netanyahu, but we cannot ignore the fact that the two of them use the most hateful language in order to gain votes, including to incite the Israeli public against the Israeli Arabs and against the Israeli left, and against the press. And the way that Netanyahu deal with the press was unprecedented in Israel. I didn't see anything like that in the past.
The way he dealt with the press, or the way the press dealt with him?
The way that he dealt with the press.
The press was very kind and fair and honest and balanced.
The fight about the papers, but I cannot understand the attitude toward the Israeli television and the way that he treated the whole press and used the press.
This is very funny. You remind me of the Palestinians who make
once Netanyahu decided to go and to make interviews, he has the whole flow. Whatever he wants to say.
Have you seen how he was treated on second channel in the morning show 2 or 3 days ago? We've seen. So sorry.
I think it's fair to say, and actually, it goes both ways. It's fair to say also that we in the media, and I think one has to take responsibility, call these elections wrong. In many ways, one of the dramatic upset, and it wasn't even maybe the computer would have done a different job, but we call these elections wrong. But Dr. Tzezna, you wanted to say?
Yes, I will say that right now, when we are looking at the combined Arab party, and we are trying to check what would happen if the other parties could actually accept it into the coalition, and if the Arab party itself wanted to go into the coalition, we find that there would be a dramatic change, that actually out of the top 5 coalitions, suddenly the Zionist Union and the Arab party could sit together along with Yesh Atid, and with Kulanu, and maybe even Meretz.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not blaming anyone, because it's both the Arab party and everybody else fault that we are not together somehow. But I would say that Israel needs more opinions. Israel needs to consider more options, and it's truly a shame that the Arab party can't become part of take full part in the Israeli
it's a valid point.
System.
It's a valid point, and I'm glad we have an academic doctor in the studio. But that said, we're going to go quickly to Daniel Ziri. who is in Tel Aviv in Rabin Square, because speaking of this polarization within the people of Israel, we can talk democracy and the people have voted, but there are parts in Israel where people have woken up this morning quite disheartened and at shock, and that's where you're standing. Isn't that the case?
Absolutely, Yael. I mean, the conversations I've had with people around Rabin Square, which is a very iconic square in Tel Aviv, charged with political meaning, are quite, disappointed this morning. So one person earlier said to me that she feels like she is mourning today, and another person said that they wanted to cry. They were hoping, a lot of people here in Tel Aviv were hoping to see a change, in government here in Israel, and that didn't happen last night, and certainly not this morning with the updated polls. But we have to say, Yael, that since 2009 elections, 2010 elections, the social agenda has become much more of a main topic in the elections, in the campaigns. We've seen this already starting in 2013, last elections, with the rise of parties like Yesh Atid and Yair Lapid's party. This year, we've also seen this with Moshe Kahlon, who ran almost only on social issues. This has been the case definitely since 2011, summer 2011, when the social justice movement was quite big here in Tel Aviv. We've heard a lot of protests. So the social agenda is becoming more of a priority in election campaigns. It's still not there yet, and the results prove that.
No, the results prove that. Very valid point. Thank you, Daniel Ziri in Tel Aviv will be joining us throughout this broadcast again. But speaking of the social agenda, and you know what, Boris Bisson, that's to you. It's something that surfaced within the Netanyahu campaign only in the last, in the 26th hour, so to speak, in the 25th hour. That's the only thing that, he all of a sudden remembered critics would say.
Very correct, very correct. I think that that's another tremendous success for him, because I don't think the Likud had a bad campaign. That's amazing. I mean, they had a bad campaign, yet they won with such a mark. And I think that the big change started only on Thursday, last Thursday, when on the polls, I mean, it was down -5. Now,
it brings me back to the change. It brings me back to the question, and you're going to touch on Tel Aviv, as Ali said, because when, the social campaign comes up in the last second, doesn't really sell, but what does seem to sell is voters, right-wing voters, whom he called soldiers on the stage in Tel Aviv several days ago, go quickly to the polls because the Arabs are voting, and that is the type of polarization.
Let's be honest. I mean, do you really think that statement made a difference? Come on, I think we're over that. The journalist over there mentioned that she saw someone crying. I also saw many people crying out of joy. So again, I mean, what do you want to represent? She speaks about Tel Aviv. We know that Tel Aviv is a city in Israel, and that is a problem with all those correspondents who come to Israel. They go, of course, to Zerotoji. They sit in a very wealthy restaurant, or very good restaurant, not that cheap, by the way, and they speak how Israel is miserable. That's Israel. Let's be honest. So, but that is not Israel. So let's go back to what you said about. I think that the speech of Prime Minister Netanyahu, his first speech, on the contrary, was very social. He understood. I think that the voters, when they voted yesterday, they told the Prime Minister, I think that was the message. Yes, sir. I think with Iran, we're going to have a bad or weak deal. Yes, with the Palestinians, I mean, those people aren't serious. With all the respect to Abu Mazen and this maybe Nobel Prize for Peace someday, maybe when I won't be here anymore, he's not really serious. But with all the respect, we're going to give you, I mean, a mandate, but you're going to also take care of, I mean, of the prices here, which are really too high, of the difficulties we have in order to buy houses. And by the way, many people speak in Israel about where is the money, where is time, also. I mean, we work like crazy in our country. And I think that I do believe that he got the message. And by the way, when he's going to work with a person like Kahlon, I think he won't have any other option than to be much more social now.
Being the winner horse.
Yeah, yes. I think that it was of a big interest to see, in case that the results were a little bit different, to see whether the Arab United list would have not only recommend the Israeli president to nominate Bougie Herzog, but whether they are going to be a part or not of the coalition. You know, all the leaders, including Ayman Aoud, the new superstar of the Israeli media, said time is not yet suitable for us to be part of the coalition. And when you go to the streets and you see that people want to be part of the decision making, to see that more than 70% of the voters of this list want to see the representatives in the coalition, and you know, some of them said, let's take the Haredi experience to be deputy ministers for a start and not fully ministers in the Israeli government. I think the result made us miss this experience and this challenge that will be presented in front of the Arab list by their electors that wanted to be part of the decision making. And you know what? Why Mr. Netanyahu will not suggest to an Arab Israeli to be part, I know that there won't be any Arab Israeli, but to be part of his government.
Let's think also the contrary. Why doesn't, for example, an Arabic voter or an Arabic deputy thinks maybe it's about time that we stop thinking of taking free trips on a ship, for example? So let's be serious. I mean, or Fatila in that case. Enough. I mean, look, I mean, let's be serious and let's think for a moment. We're just a few hours and Israeli voters and democracy, let's respect. I mean, we respected democracy in the Arab Spring and we did not have a democracy. And the Israeli voters, and you talk about the party that isn't even a Zionist. So again, the Labour Party, historical party. Wait a second, I know. Would Israel appreciate it? The history has proven that Labour Party has built this country. I respect the Labour Party, yet it changed its name to what? To Zionist Union. Zionist is not a bad word in Israel, by the way. Only to remind those 14 deputies of
I think the question is, what is Zionist?
But I didn't say, was I a lawyer? Was I a representative? Why do you see Israelis, I mean, so much supporting non-Zionist parties?
No, but it's a great point. What does Zionism mean, actually?
I'm sorry?
Right now it looks like 30 or 40% of the Israeli electorate are not Zionists.
Well, I didn't see Shas, for example, which is not a party I ever voted or I appreciate that much, going on a flotilla, for example, against Israel. I've never seen that. So please, let's be clear. Let's not make let's not compare something that is uncomparable. Especially for a doctor.
We respect democracy, but democracy has two parts. The first one is that the majority is the one to make the call, and the second is to protect the minority rights.
Sure.
And what we have seen in the last few days, including the attitude toward the Israeli Arabs, even if they are not Zionists. So what if they are not Zionists? They need to get the same treatment like any other citizens. By the way, if you want to make them at least a bit less hatred to Zionism, this is also your interest. And Netanyahu is an expert to do exactly the opposite and to split the country, to divide it, to use the anger, the incitement, the hate against each other in order to gain votes. We just saw it. And when we are speaking about the rally, who organized the rally? The rally was being organized by Daniela Weiss, the one and only settler supporters that support refuse orders in the Israeli army. Few weeks ago, Netanyahu decided to take down someone in the committee of the Price of Israel because he was supportive of refuseniks in the left. And just days after, he is the guest of the one that supported out loud. So democracy is not just that the majority is going to make the decision. It's also about the minority rights. It's also about refuseniks. It's also about other things. And I don't like to say it, but Netanyahu used all, it wasn't just the statement about the Israeli Arabs. It was also the statement about Hamas is like the left wing, and then Hamas is like people that are working in the ports.
You stick out the spot on TV.
Yeah, okay. And it wasn't by accident. It was very clear that this was the message to try to use incitement and hate in order to gain vote, and it worked for him. We have to say it out loud. I'm ready to say, take responsibility that we have a lot of things to fix, but we have to say
just
it as well.
First. I leave now Netanyahu and Bougie and Livni. I speak about something that we all have in common. We love this country and we love Israel. And by the way, we have a democracy. Maybe in 2 years, in 3 years, in 1 year, maybe it will be someone else. Probably because there will be a change, of course. And Netanyahu is not forever. We're not in North Korea.
Democracy is also Supreme Court.
Wait a second, but
in 2 years elections again?
Maybe I don't know. Do you know? Can you foresee?
No.
Yet, do I have any prophet here?
No,
but
not really.
One thing. I heard so much about my country, but I'm trying to make parallel between extremes and about disrespectful people. Only to tell you that my Israeli apartheid in brackets, of course, God forbid, I will not have Marzel. I'll be very sorry if he'll be in the parliament. For the time being, he is not. Yet Zouabi is in. That is, by the way, the Israeli apartheid. Please.
Yeah, I mean, one can call that, something that you answer that you answer critics. But if we're looking at democracy this morning, Ali Walker, I'm wondering with you out loud in the short time that we have, which is approximately a minute and a half, does the Arab voter, the Arab Israeli voter this morning, feel that he was rightfully represented, but furthermore, will he be represented in the next government?
Or does he feel to be proud to be Israeli?
Well, I think he is proud to be Israeli, and these are not only the polls that showed it, all researchers that have been made by Professor Sami Smocha in the Haifa University and elsewhere. The Israeli Arabs want to be part of the Israeli collective entity. The Israeli Arabs want to be part of the political game in Israel, and I'm afraid that part of the results that we saw this morning, that the Israeli mainstream told the Arab, you are going to stay for at least a couple of more years, outsiders and not part of the Israeli family. Yet I think what was yesterday, in spite of the everybody is betting that this list will split, that we are seeing a new experience of the Arabs, a message to those Arabs who don't want the majority of the Arab to recognize the Israeli institutions, that we want to be a part of this state and part of this game.
Again, that was one of the dramatic results of these elections, and that the joint list, the Arab one they referred to as the Arab-Israeli list, so to speak, coming out with 13 or 14. But news of the day, Israel voted. Benjamin Netanyahu remains prime minister with a huge lead at this point in time, 30 mandates, between 29 and 30 mandates for Likud. Stay with us. I-24 News Morning Edition, a special edition taking a look at the results of the Israeli elections, the dramatic results. We will be back right after the news. Good morning, I-24 News Morning Edition on this March 18th, 2015. Dramatic results of the Israeli elections. The Phoenix, the man that political analysts and opponents have called the magician, Benjamin Netanyahu, does it again. Results this morning are very dramatic. The country of Israel went to sleep thinking there's a split in the middle between left and right, yet this morning the numbers are showing a completely different pictures. If we can take a look at those numbers again, and we are looking at Benjamin Netanyahu, the leader of the Likud party, the man who waged a fierce campaign, a campaign that can only be applauded because over the course of the last 4 days, if we were to listen to media in this country, it seemed he was going to look at an upset, but no, it is Benjamin Netanyahu who made the upset himself. Looking at the following numbers this morning, as of right now, the Likud with 30 mandates. 30 mandates for the Likud, the Zionist Union with 24. We don't have these numbers now. We're going to move along. And joining me in studio to discuss what this puts Israel, what this means for the country of Israel, if indeed, as Benjamin Netanyahu mentioned this morning, he's calling first people from his camp, from his ideology, and that would be the right, if we're looking at the right-wing government for Israel. We are joined in studio. What does that mean for the world? What does that mean for the country? Co-chairman of the Republicans abroad in Israel, Mr. Mark Zell. Good morning.
Good morning, Yael. As always, great to be here.
Big smile on your face. Spokesman for the American Democratic Party in Israel, Mr. Sheldon Shore. Mr. Shore, good morning to you. Also, we are very, very honored to be joined in studio by former Justice Minister Yossi Beilin. Mr. Beilin, good morning to you. And before we start a discussion here, because many people around the world were looking at the elections in Israel, most likely also the American administration, it is no secret the relations between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Obama have not been grand, to put it mildly. So we are joined now by D.C. correspondent Rebecca Shimoni-Stoll of Times of Israel in D.C. Rebecca, good morning to you. Champion of the morning, being up so late with us here in Israel. Reactions, any reactions to these very dramatic results that are being received in a very dramatic way in Israel? Any reactions in D.C., and what do you think it will spell for the relations between Israel and the White House? Let's be specific about that.
Well, good morning to you. I think that a lot of people in Washington are going to wake up this morning and pull the covers back over their heads. Mostly in the administration. I think there's quite a few people who went to sleep last night thinking that perhaps they had something that they thought that they could work with and are going to wake up in the morning to find that the opposite perhaps is true. Certainly the administration has already made the formal gestures that of course it will work with the Netanyahu administration or any democratically elected administration of Israel. So that is a start from Washington, but that's far, far, far from the finish line of a healthy working relationship. I think in particular, comments made by Netanyahu over the past 4 days of his kind of last campaign push have really threatened to create a bigger wedge with the administration. And the administration's been holding off, at least publicly, in responding to comments in which Netanyahu appeared to be kind of walking back his commitment to the two-state solution. Right. Certainly, there was no response to the comments during the election day about whether or not people should vote because of the number of Arab turnout. But those comments and those responses were on hold quite explicitly as the electioneering was going on. I think that starting today, we're going to see the gloves come off a little bit. Most importantly, of course, is when and if President Barack Obama is going to call Prime Minister Netanyahu to congratulate him for his election victory. I would love to be a fly on the wall during that phone call.
Rebecca, no, rightfully so, and thank you so much for indeed those observations when it comes to the morning that the world is waking up to and the relations between Israel and the United States in the foreseeable future. Thank you, Rebecca Shimoni-Stoli in Washington, D.C. this morning. To all my esteemed friends and colleagues in the studio right now, I would like to start with former Justice Minister Mr. Bailing. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
We are looking at relations between Israel and the world. This is the main topic of this item. But you are formerly of also Meretz being of left of the dial. The left in Israel has taken quite a blow this morning, so it seems. Where do you think that it has gone wrong? And what do you think, the Zionist Union or the leftist factions, where can they go to from now at this point?
Well, the picture is quite complicated. Why? Because none of us thought that we'll get up this morning with a Labour government. According to all the polls, even if the Labour was bigger than Likud, there was no government, there was no coalition of the left. And the question was whether if there are more seats for Labour, there would be perhaps a unity government, maybe even rotation. These were the talks. So, and on the other hand, at least the Zionist camp got 24 seats, which is something very new for the left in the last years. So it is a kind of an achievement. True, there is a frustration because there were thoughts that if it is close to 60, Moshe Kahlon might decide, nobody knew, but might decide to say, okay, since there is a big gap in favor of Labour, I would join Zion. This was actually the only hope. The only hope, not that there will be a majority for the left, and this did not happen.
The only thing I will beg to differ and say is that even late last night, people were looking at the possibility of Labour, not Labour, Zionist Union forming government, but possibly being in consideration for a unity government, which doesn't even seem to be on the table at all.
I'm not sure, but I'll tell you why. It is true that it won't be a rotation, but I think that for Netanyahu, maybe the Zionist camp doesn't want to be under Netanyahu in a unity government, but for Netanyahu, to think about a pure rightist party with Bennett and the others would not be so simple because of what we are going to talk today.
Okay, then let's take it to there. And for that we have Mr. Mark Zoll, the Republicans abroad, and Sheldon Shore of the Democrats abroad. Putting aside what Rebecca Shimoni-Stoli just said to us, this is a major, and Mr. Bailing, as you said, maybe nobody was looking to form a Labour or / Zionist Union coalition, but this doesn't even give anything a chance when it comes to that. And Prime Minister Netanyahu sweeps and veers, and it seems like the people of Israel have taken, a step to the right, or they're leaning more right. At the end of the day, Mark, this is a man who stood on the stage, and people will argue disavowed himself from a promise he made to the international arena over on the Bar Ilan stage several years ago, promising to sit down and negotiate the two-state solution. In this campaign, he disavowed himself from that. How is that going to be explained to the international community and to the White House, which is still democratic and is pushing for that type of an agenda?
Well, Yael, I just yesterday literally got off the plane and ran to cast my vote in this election coming from Washington. Spent the last 10 days in Washington, a good deal of it on Capitol Hill. I must tell you that the mood in the United States is, at least it was almost completely opposite as to what we were hearing here in Israel during the course of the campaign with respect to Netanyahu's speech in Washington and his standing in the eyes of Americans, Democrats and Republicans. And he has changed the debate in the United States notwithstanding the vehement opposition of the President Obama to what he had to say and the rather petulant reaction that the White House showed during Netanyahu's visit. Now, what I suspect is this. I can't speak for the Prime Minister with regard to the negotiations with the Palestinian Arabs, but I can say that the Prime Minister has shown himself to be a man of courage and conviction, in my view. I think he'll, vis-a-vis the international community, and I think that we expect him to continue to do that. The argument that for in favor of a unity government that Mr. Balin alluded to a moment ago worked in 2009. The Prime Minister Netanyahu, at the beginning of the Obama administration, did opt for a unity government with labor under Barak at that time, precisely because he wanted to try to mollify relationships with the incoming Obama administration. But now we're at a different stage of history. We're 6 years into the Obama administration. He's a lame duck president, albeit one with an agenda, and I don't expect him to go the unity government way, and he may
but,
choose to back off the
Palestinian
Palestinian
the question remains, and Shalom, maybe you want to answer that. Is Obama a lame duck president at this stage of his presidency? Is he going to not do anything in that respect? And now that he is facing Prime Minister Netanyahu as the Prime Minister of Israel over the course of the next 2 years of his term in the White House, what can he do?
All right. I really don't like this lame duck business. He is the president of the United States. He was declared a lame duck president 2 years ago after he was elected, and that's ridiculous. He is the president of the United States until January 20th, 2017. That's 22 months, almost 2 years from now. He's going to be living with Mr. Netanyahu as the Prime Minister of Israel. Now, despite the interference and the impermissible and probably improper interference of America into the Israeli elections and Israel into American elections, nevertheless, Bibi Netanyahu has a president that's not his favorite choice, and the president has a prime minister that's not his favorite choice. They're going to have to learn to live with each other. They are both professionals. They both represent their countries, and I think they represent their countries properly and with vigor, and they will have to learn in some way to learn together. The chief interest and the chief connection between the United States and Israel is not based upon the personalities of the president and the prime minister and whether they like each other or would like to go on a vacation together. The chief relationships are based upon very important, grounded things, including democracy, including mutual interests, and they're going to work together.
Which I think is a point and a valid point that all of us, we always agree on that at the end of the day, the two countries are always going to have to, work together, at least for the foreseeable future. But I want to ask you, Mr. Balin, because you're, former Justice Minister, you sat in that government. When you look from the outside right now at the relationship between Israel and the United States, is it just a rhetoric of animosity? Or is it something that's been destabilized, and now we're looking at a situation where, one needs to get out of it, be it the Israeli prime minister or the American president?
Well, there is a problem. There is a heavy problem between Netanyahu and Obama. This is very clear. Now one can say, well, it is not so important because some of the Republicans like Obama, or the president is a lame duck and whatever, and he's not the one who is taking all the decisions. But the fact that we are facing such a gap between the two people means a lot. And the point is that although the basis is the joint values and the strategic needs and whatever, this is true. But at crucial points, when the Israeli prime minister needs the American president, like it was in Cairo a few years ago, in the attempt to kill the Israelis in the Israeli embassy, and Obama was not there at the beginning, but only after a few hours, everybody here was shaking. In these moments, we need the good personal relationship between the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of the United States, whoever he or she is. And if you don't have this relationship, you are in a worse situation. This is one of the reasons why Netanyahu needs badly a kind of Ehud Barak or Tzipi Livni or somebody like them, who can call the Americans
valid
and the
point, Mark.
Europeans.
I'm saying in the short time that we have, somebody who can call the Americans. Seriously, in the short time that we have, because we do have a few minutes left.
But Obama did respond, and he did rescue.
Yeah, but in 2 minutes, isn't that move that we saw in the U.S. Congress at the end of the day, and I don't think politicians, I would like to think politicians are not children who hold grudges, okay? I'd like to think that's not the case, but that said, aren't we looking at a situation where if, God forbid, something happens here, you know, in the next, you know, several weeks or months, that the relationship is not that good for that phone call that Mr. Balin so rightfully mentioned right now.
I think everybody around this table, I think, has said that the ultimate decisions between the strategic relationship between the United States and Israel will not be affected by the personal affections of their leaders. And in fact, one of the things that's happening today, despite Obama's view about the Middle East and Israel, is close cooperation between American military and intelligence forces and the Israeli ones. It's continuing on a daily basis. And the reason why that's happening, because it's in the mutual interests of both countries to do it. The relationship between the United States and Israel, both at a political level and at an operational level, is strong and will remain strong for the balance of Obama's administration.
And Obama's proved himself time and time again, both by the veto in the UN, by the close cooperation militarily and intelligence, as Mark has mentioned, that he's come through and is a very great supporter of Israel and understands Israel's strategic and security needs and is working hard to support it.
I don't agree with the last statement about being a great supporter of Israel, but he is not stopping the traditionally strong relationship between the two countries' operational intelligence military forces.
Netanyahu sees Obama as a kind of an enemy, He sees the Europeans as his enemies. He believes that all of them are wrong, and he is right, fine. But he believes that he needs something in order to change the situation. He cannot go on from his point of view. I don't think that Labour should accept a unity government. This is my own view. But from his point of view, since he is the person of the worst case scenarios in every area, he will be, in my view, the one who will ask Labour to join him because he sees a hostile world.
I mean, sadly, all the time we have, but Mr. Balin, you'll be staying with us, and you've heard it here. Mr. Balin does think that Netanyahu might be heading to a unity government. It is all speculations at this stage. I-24 News, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wins, actually, the Israeli elections, and Likud does as well. 30 mandates. Stay with us. We will be back right after the news. Good morning. I-24 News Morning Editions, March 18th, 2015, with dramatic results of the Israeli elections coming in this morning. The latest numbers that we are looking at, as of this morning, puts the Likud anywhere between 29 and 30. Currently, it's looking as 29 or 30 for the Likud. Benjamin Netanyahu, the man they call the Phoenix, the man that political analysts and his opponents over the course of his political career have deemed the magician, has done it again. And as of this morning, he is the Prime Minister of Israel and the leader of the party most poised to form a coalition. But it was the election that everybody was looking at. It was the election that people came in from all over the world, if they held an Israeli citizenship, to vote in. And we are going to go first straight live to Daniel Ziri, I-24 News correspondent, standing in Rabin Square. And you're in Rabin Square with one of those voters. And please take it away and tell us, what is the feeling where you're at?
That's right, Yael. I'm here joined by Moran Stern, who's a lecturer at Georgetown University School of Foreign Service in Washington, D.C. Moran, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Daniel. Good morning.
I would just want to ask you, you came here especially to vote in these elections since Israel does not allow you to do that from abroad. How do you feel, just explain to us this decision, and how do you see those results today?
First of all, don't tell my parents that the only reason I came here was to vote in the elections. They're actually quite certain that I'm here for them. No, I'm joking. On a more serious note, I'm an Israeli national who happens to live in the United States and not the other way around. And when my country goes for democratic elections, I'm here to take part in this civic obligation. It was not even a question. On the second part of your question, I think that what we have seen over the night is what have turned from being a tied race between the Zionist camp and the national camp headed by Netanyahu and the Likud party is essentially a decisive defeat to the left. And the defeat is a systemic defeat, we can say it, I would say, at this point. The biggest task of the center-left in Israel today is to go and look for a new leadership within itself. I believe that in order for the left, the center-left, to be a reliable alternative to the national camp is to have its own new Yitzhak Rabin. And this is the major test today. It goes beyond rhetoric. Apparently, it goes beyond socioeconomic concerns. It is a lot about personality, and this is where the Zionist camp have lost grounds, I would say.
Moran, I want to ask you about the U.S. administration, because we know the U.S. administration was certainly kind of hoping for a change in government here in leadership here in Israel, and even a few of the groups that were actually advocating for a change and anti-Netanyahu groups were funded by some U.S. people. How do you think this result is perceived there?
So first of all, backing political ideas and movements here in Israel by non-Israeli elements, especially from the United States, is not something that is associated only with the left side of the political map here in Israel, but also the right has a long tradition of tycoons who kind of help the agenda of the right. So this is bipartisan in Israel. But what is more concerning, I think, is that the fact that there is an outside involvement in Israeli politics indicates that we in Israel cannot put things together properly.
Moran, thank you so much for being with us. Yael, back to you in the
Daniel
studio.
Ziri in Rabin Square in Tel Aviv. Thank you for being with us this morning, bringing you reports from all over the country. Joining me in studio, I-24 News senior news editor Ruthie Sinai, the woman I cannot open my day without.
Good morning.
There you go. Flattery will get me everything. Good morning to you. Ayman Sikzak of I-24 News Evening Edition, I-24 News correspondent. Thank you for being with us this morning. We're going to take a look at reactions around the world to these very faithful elections. It is no secret that around the world globally, people were looking closely at the Israeli elections. And of course, headlines this morning in some Israeli newspapers as well as regionally. But Ruthie, let's start with you. First of all, you were holding, and we have to remind people, yes, Haaretz, wait up.
Right. This went to press. This is the Haaretz daily newspaper, left-leaning. It went to press right after the exit polls. It went to press before the real results were in, and it basically says significant achievement for Netanyahu. Below here it says the upset that never was. In other words, people were expecting the center-left.
The upset, the turnover, so to speak. And I think it's fascinating to show that this goes straight to the core of the point that all of us, civilians, journalists, went to bed last night thinking the country of Israel is split in the middle, yet this morning the picture is different.
Totally different, and kind of hard to understand. Do we have
yes, and we're looking at actually the next headline is from Yediot Ahronot. That's the major circulation in Israel. We're looking at Ynet right now. Yediot Ahronot, the headline in Ynet this morning, if we have it, there we go. Herzog concedes defeat after surprise Netanyahu victory.
Yeah.
That's a done deal, isn't it?
Yeah, I actually saw him on the local news before he came out of his house, and I have to say it looked like he'd been crying.
Really?
Yeah. And he basically said, we're going to serve from the opposition, and the people have said
their word entirely.
Yeah.
That's within Israel. Ayman Sikzak. I want to take a look with you because there's a tendency, I think, for Israeli civilians, Israeli citizens, people who say that they only look inwards, they only look nationally, they only care about what they think inwards. But I think the Arab world was also looking very closely at these elections.
Absolutely. I mean, the sense of disenchantment that we saw in the media recently from civilians was also clear in the Arab media, even though this morning there was a sense of we knew this was coming. And we start with Ynet, the most widely read platform in Israel for Arab Israelis.
Right.
It's basically like Ynet. It's Ynet done in Arabic. And it has a response today from Hamas saying it does not differentiate between Herzog or the Likud. as far as Hamas is concerned, they're both the same in terms of how their policy will be with the Palestinians. And what we see here is actually Panit predicted several times that a unity government between the Likud and Herzog is possible. And right now we don't know. This could actually happen. Maybe the
but that's the fascinating point that, you know, even throughout, and Ruthie, you will agree with me, that the talk of a unity government, from political analysts, even in Israel, I think that is what was being picked up in the Arab press as well, was that everybody was thinking there's some road open here for a unity government, but this morning it doesn't seem likely, does it?
I mean, Netanyahu doesn't need it. He's got all the votes he needs to form a stable right-wing government with the ultra-Orthodox parties, and he really doesn't need this national unity government at all.
If anybody's looking at that. Moving along with the Arab press, well, what other headlines?
We have a headline, an interesting headline from RT News in Arabic. In RT News, it's interesting to see the eulogy that we saw for Netanyahu over the past 2 weeks never happened. It seemed like RT News was certain that Netanyahu is going to win. Today, they have a response from
Who is their pollster? Is what I want to know. So,
well, we had similar polls here in I-24 News Evening Edition.
Was making fun of at times, definitely.
And much to our happiness or detriment, it turns out that they were right.
No, I'm going to, on the air, give credit to Mr. Avid Ghani of the Geocartography the pollster of I-24 News. Yes, moving on. And
PLO members said that they think this win for the Likud will mean that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict will continue to be stuck and frozen. They're not willing to negotiate with Netanyahu. This is nothing new, but it seems like from reading this article, things are going to be very depressing in the coming future.
Doom and destruction. No, but I'm asking you guys a lot because you're sitting with me, and Ali Wakid was in the studio earlier on, and he was saying that he was hearing chatter within the Palestinian Authority that people there are looking at the results in Israel and are willing to accept the notion that maybe what the Palestinian Authority needs to push is a binational state. Is that something that we think can even be on the cards? Let's start with Ayman, yes.
Well, I don't think right now with the... No, I think right now all these peace processes are off the table. Netanyahu will probably, right now he's basically cannot be extorted in any way. People thought he might have to join other parties in order to secure his coalition. It doesn't seem like that anymore. I don't think anything will be pushing him towards making concessions.
No, but not towards a binational state, but the idea, it's very interesting because Netanyahu in a last-minute panic move, basically said, if I'm prime minister, there's not going to be a
Palestinian state.
And of course, it's not entirely up to him because there is the United States, there is the UN Security Council, there is Europe, there is the International Criminal Court, and I think that perhaps, and maybe I'm sort of being, psychologically wrong here, but I think in some respects the Palestinians are breathing a sigh of relief because, here they have this man whom it's very easy to for them to dislike and for them to round up international public opinion against. And now, for them, I think the way is very clear to international...
Or as one can say, the status quo continues. It's a perfect time to turn to Jonathan Satch-Shadadi, I-24 News European correspondent. And Jonathan, good morning to you. Reactions around the world, people were looking at this election closely, or so the people of Israel would like to think. But what are the reactions in Europe to these very dramatic results that actually nobody foresaw in the media?
Quite right. Well, good morning to you from London. And I can tell you here that most people aren't really talking about this, which might seem strange to Israel that's been in the thick of election fever for so long. When there's no change or no apparent change, there's obviously no news for us. And people here tend to see the Israeli elections through one particular lens and only through that particular lens, which is that of the conflict with the Palestinians. In terms of that, obviously, Benjamin Netanyahu is not a popular figure across much of Europe, or so people believe. With more and more European countries symbolically recognizing Palestinian statehood over the last year or so, there will be problems for Mr. Netanyahu and his new government to deal with. But of course, this is nothing that he's unused to. So it will remain to be seen exactly what attitude people will take. This is an election. This is, let's not forget, from a European perspective, a rare moment of democracy in the Middle East. Not that they're rare in Israel, but for people looking from Europe, where we have regular and fairly free elections, it's notable that Israel is a democracy, and this has been the democratic choice of the Israeli people. Here today, it's budget day in the UK, so this will slip off the news radar fairly quickly, and we'll move on to talking about things like Ed Miliband's 2 kitchens and whether or not in our elections that is going to swing the vote here. So we're about to enter the crazy election fever that you've just been through. And I think Israel will be off the agenda.
No, Jonathan, I know. I'm wondering if Miliband does have pistachio ice cream in those 2 kitchens, but I only said that here. Jonathan Sacherdoti from London, thank you. We're going to go straight to Ron Friedman. Outside the Israeli parliament, the Israeli Knesset. Ron, we are hearing also that, as we mentioned this morning, Yitzhak Herzog has called to congratulate Prime Minister Netanyahu. A fait accompli, as one would say here. What are we looking at when it comes to the day ahead?
I don't know how much of a congratulatory phone call. Maybe it was a conciliatory phone call for Livni, Herzog and Livni and Yechimovic and all the folks over at the Labor and Zionist Union camp. They know they're headed for the opposition. They have to accept that. We've also beginning to hear statements from people on the right, apart from Netanyahu. Naftali Bennett, the head of the Jewish Home Party, gave a short interview in which he allowed himself to be magnanimous. He said, the government or the parties that were elected, the government that's going to be formed is the government of everybody. He's already talking as if he's part of the government, which I guess it's fair to assume he is. We also heard some sound bites from Avigdor Lieberman, the foreign minister, whose party won 6 seats in the elections, and he also congratulated Netanyahu. And when asked, kind of interestingly, when asked if he's a sure thing into the government, he said, look, nothing's a done deal. We congratulate Netanyahu on his victory, and we're going to let him make the call. We're gonna find out in the next coming days if they're going to be part of the coalition. He didn't mention anything about demanding the defense portfolio, as he had done during the campaign.
But and Ron Friedman, fabulous job, obviously done for us. I'm from the Israeli Knesset, and as you mentioned, thank you, sir. First of all, Ron Friedman, as you mentioned, and as Ruthie mentioned, we are not looking at a possibility of a unity government, but if Netanyahu wants, he doesn't need a unity government. He's got a stable right-wing government if he wants and so chooses to. Let's take a look at those numbers. This is March 18th, 2015, in the minute that we have to go. Likud standing firm at 30 this morning at this hour when we're looking at the numbers of the Israeli elections. 24 for the Zionist Union. That is a 6-margin lead of the Likud. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the Phoenix, the man who was deemed the magician by so many of his opponents over the course of his 20-plus political career, is the secure, so it seems, leader of Israel for the next 4 years or 2 years. And thank you all for being with us. Do stay with I-24 News. We'll give you updates throughout the day of these dramatic results in the Israeli elections, and have a wonderful day.